Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Point View Wealth Management's monthly webinar. We're talking about cybersecurity today. It looks like a very popular topic. Um, Before we launch into this, I know most of you are familiar with Point View Wealth Management. We're in Summit, New Jersey. Recently entered into a merger with PPAC Gladstone Private Wealth Management. But prior to that, we've been around since 1993. I'm Claire Toth, the Vice President of Point View, and I'm joined this afternoon by the newest member of our team, Portfolio Manager and Managing Director, Fritz Schoenhut. So in lieu of giving you a little bit of background about Point View itself, I thought that we'd let Fritz introduce himself. So take it away.
Thank you very much, Claire. As Claire mentioned, my name is Fritz Schoenhut. I joined Point View about a month and a half ago, and I've had the pleasure of meeting some of you. But as short of my time here has been, I have worked in wealth management for about 6 years. Previous to my time at Point View, I was at Goldman Sachs for about 5, almost 6 years, working in the private wealth management division. And prior to that, I was a tax associate at Grant Thornton. I have a master's in tax and a bachelor's degree in finance from Notre Dame as well. And I'm thrilled to be here at Point View and looking forward to getting to know all of our clients and everyone we work with.
We're thrilled to have Fritz with us. He failed to mention that he holds the Chartered Financial Analyst designation, which is about the biggest deal there is out there in the investment world, and he's in the process of getting ready to sit for his certified financial planner designation. So he's been busy.
Yeah.
And now let's start talking about cybersecurity. So I'm going to turn off my camera. We'll let the presentation speak for itself. There's a lot out there on cyber fraud and protecting yourself. We could talk about it for days. So what we're trying to do this afternoon in our limited amount of time is to focus on topics that are specific to investors, and even more specifically, some situations that we've seen, how we or whoever you work with in the financial world might deal with this, how you can best protect yourself. And in getting ready for this, we've dug up some pretty scary statistics that Fritz is going to go over.
Sure. So as you see on the screen, here are some fraud statistics that we've uncovered just through kind of compiling in some facts that we've looked for. So the first here is that there's a hacker attack every 39 seconds here in the United States. We feel that's pretty shocking. 1 in 3 Americans are affected by fraudulent hacking attempts each year. And a report recently compiled by Symantec concluded that by 2020, there will be roughly 200 billion internet-connected devices. So that's everything from your cars, home appliances, your phones, your watches, and even light bulbs. I've seen some commercials for a new light bulb that has a 360-degree camera. So as the internet creeps further and further into our daily lives, those are just more opportunities for fraudsters, for hackers to infiltrate. And then lastly, millennials are the most impacted group of people by cybercrime. Over 50% of millennials experienced cybercrime in the last year. That's pretty astounding, but going back to the previous point, the biggest users of internet-connected devices tend to be the millennials and the younger generations. And it doesn't really come as a surprise, but certainly something that we should all be vigilant of.
And unfortunately, that doesn't mean that us older types aren't immune from this. I guess I think of cybersecurity like home security. If somebody's really determined to get you, they probably will. But if someone's just looking for an easy target, there are a fair number of things you can do to protect yourself, so they'll move on to the next guy. And to that end, don't let them in. that's a whole lot easier than having to deal with them once they do get in. So let's start talking about your email. The first thing you should do, whether or not your email provider makes you do it, is change your password at least every 3 months. Do it the first day of the calendar quarter, when you send in your estimated taxes, something, create a trigger to change that email, that password. We, like everybody else, see hacked emails all the time. And speaking solely for myself, the accounts that are the most frequently hacked tend to be the AOLs and Yahoos. So if you move away from them, that may also help protect you. What are your password tips, Fritz?
Yes, I think so. What we've been hearing is the longer the better, as Claire mentioned, but even sentences are better than words. So that's something that it's a harder password for hackers and fraudsters to deconstruct. And then beyond that, changing your passwords not just once every 3 months, but also for different sites. And so when you're thinking about what password should you set, a lot of people tend to have the same password across their email, their financial accounts, and a lot of other websites now that require you or have you create an account. And so it wouldn't be wise to add the same password to your local newspaper website that you have for your email or for your Fidelity account or your other trading accounts. So creating different passwords for different sites and utilizing sentences, things that are difficult to break down and deconstruct, those are always the preferred tips.
It's also important to clean out your emails. If there's something you need to save, travel plans, those cute grandchildren pictures, something, keep them somewhere else in your system, not your email. And here's the first war story of why, because this happened to clients of ours a couple of years ago. It was a couple, they sold their first house. We're going to take an extended trip to Europe, come back and purchase the second house. And they had sent us a lot of information. We were holding the proceeds. We knew what the trip was going to be, where they were going. And sure enough, we started getting emails. There's been a financial emergency. We need some funds. We're in this remote place in Europe. We don't have access to a cell phone, so please believe our emails. This sparked a lot of conversation in the office, and I'll get back to the conversation part of it later. But we did eventually ask for a number of alternative ways to verify their identity. All of a sudden, the emails stopped. When the couple came back to the States, they said, no, had it never been us, we didn't send them, thank you for not sending out the money. But it was very clear that whoever hacked the emails had also gone in and read conversations back and forth between the clients and us, and did a really good job of sounding like the clients.
Yeah, and along those lines, the deleting old emails, the more emails that you have and exchanges that are filed away, the easier it is for someone to go in and learn how you write, how you type, to make those emails sound legitimate. Additionally, attachments where you might have signed a document and just emailed it out, as innocuous as it may have been at the time, your signature on that document, if someone were to hack into your email, could be scraped and used for other documents or transfer forms. And so I think it's prudent to delete emails that aren't necessarily required, or you if you need that to have them. If you don't need them, then perhaps ridding your inbox, deleting those emails makes the most sense.
Mm-hmm. And for any financial professional you're working with these days, be it an accountant, an attorney, an investment advisor like us, they'll typically have a secure vault as a way to transfer documents, and that is how it should be done so that you're not putting confidential information out there. Which leads us to attachments and links. Don't click through, don't open up until you've verified. Most financial sites, your credit cards, your banks are not going to send you emails with links in them. That's a security hazard. Instead, you should go to the website, open up the browser, go to your saved sites and click on to the website. If you get an email with a link or an attachment that you think may be valid, call or find some way of verifying that before you click on it, because that's how the malware gets into your computer.
Mm-hmm.
And the final piece of that is the government does not email you. As a former federal bureaucrat, I can tell you the government wants a paper trail on paper. That means they're not going to reach out by email. That certainly won't be the first form of contact. They're going to write a letter, and they're going to have a piece of paper to back up what they're saying to you. So when you get those scary emails, ignore them. They're not for real. Beyond emails, let's talk about cell phones. As our resident millennial, Fritz, you can talk about all those hacking attempts.
Yeah. So regarding your cell phone, the caller ID is as we've all seen. We'll have a no name number give us a call, and it ends up being a telemarketer or someone else. And so I think having caller ID set up on your phone, knowing who you're speaking with even before you pick up the phone, is one way to stay safe. And another tip, scams, whether it's the government trying to call you or someone giving you a call asking for your social or asking to confirm, just know those are the government's never going to phone you. So it's important to kind of keep that top of mind.
And of course, a lot of phone numbers get spoofed so that a phone number that looks like a local number, ooh, that's kind of close to so-and-so's phone number. It probably isn't. If it's someone who knows you, they'll leave a message.
Mm-hmm.
We've all heard stories lately about what's called the grandparent trick, where typically it's a call from a younger person to an older person, saying, Grandpa, it's me. Sometimes they'll even know the grandchild's name. I'm in trouble. Don't tell Mom. You hear, and what follows is a scam. And this is a very targeted fraud, because even if you're good about having your information out there on the web, it's out there. All you need to do is join a few affinity groups on social media networks, and they'll get your extended family, they'll have your hometown, and on and on and on. A friend of mine who is an attorney recently got one of those calls. In fact, his wife thought it legitimately was the younger generation calling. But because my friend's a lawyer, when he spoke to the young man who claimed to be in trouble, he said, well, tell me who your lawyer is. I'll deal with your lawyer directly. And that was the end of that. Another one that people occasionally fall for, my daughter got the call telling her that due to fraudulent activity, her Social Security number had been suspended. That's another one of the government won't call you. There's no such thing as suspending a Social Security number. So again, when you get these scary calls, they aren't real. And we'll circle back to the scary and the pressure in just a little bit. financial accounts. Fritz?
Sure. So here you'll see a couple different ways to make sure that your financial accounts are secure. I think I'll start in the lower left-hand corner using two-factor authentication when possible. So we've all seen that, and it could be bothersome at times, but when you go to log in, having the ability to make sure that you're going to be receiving a text or a phone call and to give you a code to then enter on the screen. And that way, if someone were to hack your password and log into your trading account, your investment account, your checking account, they would also have to have your phone. So that just limits the potential for any hacking there.
And a twist on that is you want that second factor to be phone specific. So a message sent to your email account if the same person has hacked your email account and your credit card, then you're really toast. Mm-hmm. So you do want it to be a code to your phone, or there are actually apps that generate a secure code every 30 seconds, and you can sync those to your financial accounts. So it's just not a text; it's something that's on your phone.
Mm-hmm. And back to the email. Again, that's why you may want to change your password between your email and your financial accounts, so one person with the same password couldn't get into both. So the second thing would be to set up transactional alerts. I think we see this all the time in commercials for credit cards or bank accounts, where you'll get an alert on your phone saying, "Hey, there was this transaction. Is this you?" Or you get texts, and I know I've gotten texts in the past from my bank saying, "Hey, this transaction went through in let's say Wyoming. Was that you?" And of course the answer is no, and they'll freeze the account, not allow the purchase to go through. And again, sometimes when it is a legitimate purchase or transfer, and you're getting those alerts, taking that extra step to just say yes. I think it's worth it for those cases when it's not you.
Right. And Fritz had alluded to needing different passwords. What I've seen out there is saying it's okay to use the same password in non-financial accounts. Yeah, for your local newspaper, for Instagram or some other social media. But the financial accounts really each need their own passwords. And back to social media, when you set up those accounts and they ask you those security questions, if you're logging in from a new device so you don't recall your password, you don't have to be honest when you answer those security questions. You just have to be repeatable. Because again, for instance, I'm not a big Facebook user, but I do belong to an affinity group for the town I grew up in. So anyone out there who wants to find me is going to know where I went to middle school. I belong to a group with my extended family talking about genealogy and family history. Guess what? They're going to get my mother's maiden name. They're going to get my father's middle name. I wouldn't say I went to Hogwarts because that's probably too obvious a fake answer, but don't answer those questions honestly, and that'll give you yet another level of security. Mm-hmm. And then just in general, we had talked about urgency and the need for a rapid response. If you're caught off guard, you are more likely to get pulled into something. And I think it's a useful exercise to think through in advance how you would respond to an email or a phone call with a request for urgency. This almost bleeds over into, I've given presentations to senior citizens groups. because they are often vulnerable to the urgent requests, or that demographic is perceived as vulnerable. And the first thing you have to do is step back and take a deep breath. You don't have to respond immediately. Even if it's your grandkid who got arrested, he's probably not going up in front of the judge in the next 15 minutes. So think about it. I need to talk to somebody. All financial accounts now, when you set them up, there's a space on the account application for a trusted contact. For existing financial accounts, you can add a trusted contact. So perhaps that's the person you should be talking to. Because if we hear from you and we're not sure if it's you or not, that's who we're going to be talking to. But talking to somebody you do trust, I think, is a big way to sort through, is this real, is this not real? Have you seen similar things, Fritz?
Yes, I have, and I think we've even seen it, and this will go to something that we speak to later in the presentation. But we see it on our side, or I have seen it on this side of the table as well, where someone will call in and say there's urgency to get a transfer done, and you oftentimes need to take a step back and loop in someone that or try calling the client back on a number that and so I think that urgency is usually a big red flag, and reaching out to people that you trust is always important to get that second level of verification.
And of course, unusual payment forms really ought to get you nervous. There is no government agency that will accept gift cards as payment. Yet people get fooled by that one over and over again. As we will get into in a moment, wire transfer instructions cannot be just in writing. So you've got to have multiple ways to communicate with somebody asking for a funds transfer, and if you're not getting that, you should be concerned. Which leads us to how you work with your financial professionals about some of this. If you are going to need money for something, a car payment, a house payment, don't start with an email. Pick up the phone and talk to a person you know about it, because if we get the email, that's what we're going to do, and you'll save yourself a step. A few years ago, we did get one of those emails from a client, and it was interesting because it said, after 25 years of marriage, I'm finally buying my wife an engagement ring, and he wanted us to send a very significant amount of money to a jeweler. So I called. I couldn't get him on his cell phone. I couldn't get him on his work phone. I froze the accounts. And it turned out that it was real. So it was a little awkward at the jewelers when the accounts were frozen. But the client was ultimately very grateful that we did take the extra step to be sure that the request for money was from him. Your financial professionals don't like surprises, so don't surprise them. Yes, Fritz?
Yeah, and I would say one more example of the phone first about transactions. So that's not only just when there are transactions between your accounts and the financial professional and on our side, but I've seen it in instances a couple of years ago where hackers were getting into people's emails and intercepting the correspondence between the escrow agent for a home sale and themselves, and changing the wiring instructions for that potential purchase, then we received the instructions the correct way, and we had the second level of security with a phone call and verified, with verbal recognition that this was a good transaction. But we asked that the client just double check and call the escrow agent to make sure that these are the correct instructions to wire the funds, and it turned out they weren't. Somehow that email had gotten intercepted. So oftentimes, taking the extra step, we'll confirm with you, but then I think everyone needs to have a vigilant look or mindset in making sure that any transfers, whether it's between a known account or unknown account, confirming all sides of it just to make sure that there's nothing more nefarious going on.
And part and parcel of that is keeping numbers out of emails.
Mm-hmm.
I hope we all know that Social Security numbers should not go in emails. That means, for instance, do not attach your tax return to an email because your Social Security number is in there. Account numbers shouldn't be in emails. We have specific protocols for masking account numbers when we discuss them over email, but I see any number of clients who will type out an entire account number in an email, and that's extraordinarily dangerous thing to do. So it's a lot of these financial transactions, we've all gotten away from picking up the phone, but it's not a bad thing to pick up the phone and have an actual conversation. It may lead to a couple of other useful topics with your financial advisor. So please pick up the phone and call us. And I think that's a lot of it. We do have a few questions here. Do you want to take one of them, Fritz?
Sure. So what do I do if I think I may have been hacked or the target of fraud? And so one thing that, the most important first step is to contact the authorities. Time is really the biggest thing on your side in those early moments. And so making sure you're contacting the authorities first and foremost, that is the most recommended first step. And then beyond that, of course, freezing your financial accounts or changing passwords and reviewing transactions and making sure that everything is as it should be. But the authorities is always the first step.
And as Fritz mentioned, you can go in my annualcreditreport.com will link you to the 3 primary credit reporting agencies. And if there has been, all of us have been caught up in one hack or another of some retailer. So it's easy enough to go in and you can put either a fraud alert on your records that will, for 90 days, they're not supposed to open up new accounts without your consent, or you can put a freeze, which is a more permanent solution. Which way you go, I think, depends on where you are in your credit life. If you're reasonably confident you bought your last house and your last car and you really don't need more credit cards, you might as well put a lockdown on all your credit. But it can be a bit of a challenge if you need to open it up again. I think it's worth the hassle though.
Mm-hmm. A second question that we have here is public Wi-Fi, such as the local coffee shop, safe to use? And so while I think the Wi-Fi at the local coffee shop may be okay if you're doing a project, casually surfing the web, using that Wi-Fi or any unsecured Wi-Fi for reviewing your financial accounts or for logging into your checking account, um, more personal and sensitive accounts, that's not the most appropriate place to be doing that. First off, you never know who's looking over your shoulder, but also you never know the level of security that Wi-Fi has. With so many people being able to log in and log out, it's always safer to keep those more sensitive accounts and viewing and accessing those to your home or wherever it is that is the most secure wireless connection that you have.
And in situations that aren't quite as public as a coffee shop, a hotel room or something, it is worth paying up to have a hotspot on your phone that becomes the internet connection. Then you can log on securely with a laptop, or another family member can link to that with their phone. That's a much more secure way to access financial accounts if you've got to do it outside of your home or your office. We have a question as to what we do at Point View to safeguard our accounts. We do a number of things. And you should have this conversation with whoever you work with financially, with your accountant, and so on. Fidelity, who is our primary custodian, is probably investing more in technology than just about anybody out there. I would assume that all the big players are. They're very vigilant about their security. We've got secure backups on everything. We keep our data. It's on an SEC compliant cloud server out there with robust security. It's worth knowing that even in this internet world, a lot of financial information is out there on paper, and we don't keep paper around the office. We do double check all unusual money requests with the client on a known phone number from someone who knows the voice. And we have a lot of conversations here about financial transfers that are at all out of the ordinary. And that goes back to having the conversations with the trusted people and taking a step back and saying, hey, is this right? We've been surprised by the number of times it's not right, even when it sounds awfully good. So this ought to be something that you and your financial professional are partners on protecting your accounts. Fritz?
And I think that really hits the nail on the head there. I think that the kind of, just broadly speaking, the more you involve your financial professional, it'll help them do their job and thinking of the best ways to, whether it's to invest or plan financially for the future, but it also gives them an idea of what's going on in your day-to-day life, and things that they should be aware of or may want to be aware of, and then things that kind of pop up out of nowhere, just in a sense triggers the alarm, and then that's why we always have those second level of verification techniques and requirements. We're reaching out to clients via phone call, making sure that we recognize their voice, and making sure that everything is as secure as possible.
Oh, here's a fun thing to go out on. This is a note from one of the people who's on the webinar who's in the insurance industry. Because Fritz had alluded earlier about the 200 billion internet-connected devices out there. Be very cautious about charging your cell phone in a rental car, because that internet-connected rental car could have been hacked and somebody could be pulling information off of your phone. That sounds like a movie plot. That's pretty interesting. So it isn't just your financial accounts. Your car is after you too. But that's the questions that we've got for the moment. Certainly, if you've got anything specific, anyone here would be more than happy to have a live conversation with you about it. We thank you for taking the time this afternoon to listen to us on this, and we hope none of you ever goes through this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.